Today's topic is Libya and Syria, the failings of Western policy. I don't really think we're going to focus on that so much as to talk about the situation which currently exists in Syria and Libya. On our panel today, we have three very distinguished individuals. We have on my far left Suleiman Al-Fortia. When I met Suleiman in April of 2011 in Benghazi, he was at the time coming from Misrata, which he represented in the Municipal City Council, was very active in the revolution which overthrew Gaddafi the following August. He has continued his efforts on behalf of the Libyan government. He is now in an official capacity. He's a very prominent businessman. I presume he will once more come back into play in office at one point, because every place we went in Libya, we were with him a couple months ago, they all knew Suleiman. And it was very much an individual who I think has a very good perspective on what's happening in that important country. We also have with us William Morris. William is the Secretary General of the Next Century Foundation. He is engaged in various peace and reconciliation activities throughout the Middle East, particularly focused on Syria, on Iraq, on Gaza, and in Libya as well. I think William certainly has a reputation for being someone who is knowledgeable, a compassionate person, speaks with a great deal of passion, is also someone who has a very good listener, which is very important whenever you're talking about the Middle East. And Siwar, I can talk about Siwar as he's not here. Siwar is the Vice President of the United Democratic National Alliance. This is a Syrian opposition party, one of the oldest ones, against the regime of Bashar al-Assad. He is an individual who is very knowledgeable about what's going on in Syria, has family members there as well. He is also, to embarrass me more, he is actually a very good writer, well known in France for his policier novels. People have called him, and the critics have called him the George Simenon of the 21st century. But today he won't talk about that, he'll talk about Syria. So let me just begin by giving a brief little overview here, just so we know what we're talking about. Libya is a vast country. It's the size of Alaska. It is a country of only 6.2 million people, most of whom live, get back here. What is this thing here? Most of them live along the coast. Most of them live along the coast. It's 97%, most of them live along the coast, most of whom are Muslim, 97% are Muslim. So it's a country which has, unlike many others, a very homogeneous population, which is very useful. Libya is indeed a country in turmoil at the moment. It has two governments with two parliaments. You have one in Tobruk, led by Prime Minister Abdullah al-Thani, and one in Tripoli, led by Omar al-Hassi. There's a growing civil conflict with external participation. We'll hear about that today a bit. And there's a great increase in internally displaced persons because of the issues which are occurring in the country. Syria is a country of 71,000 square miles. It's about the size of Pennsylvania and New York put together, or it's about 1/2 the size of Iraq. Population in 2011 was 21 million people around. 74% are Sunnis. 13% are Shia or an Alawite, 10% were Christian, 2% were Druze. These figures, of course, have all changed a bit given the conflict. Of that 21 million people, about 10 million have been displaced. Of these, 5 million are refugees in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and elsewhere. And 1% of the population, almost 220,000 people, have died. So without further ado, I'll ask Suleiman Fortia to give us a 10-minute, William Morris will start giving us a 10-minute overview of what's going on in Libya. Then we'll have Suleiman make a brief comment, and then move on to Siwar to talk about Syria for 20 minutes or so. And then after that, we'll take questions. When we ask questions, please do identify yourselves, and no comments, just questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Hambley, Ambassador Hambley didn't introduce himself, of course. Ambassador Hambley was Ambassador for the United States in Qatar, in Lebanon. He served in Egypt. He was head of, he had so many roles, it's not true. He was head of the US negotiating team at Kyoto. He set up enough. Anyway, he's a pretty important guy. Okay, so Libya. Libya is Libya. Libya, the big town is Tripoli. This is the largest town. Second largest town, Benghazi over here. So you have Western Libya, Eastern Libya, and then a lot of smaller towns, some of them quite small, but the third largest, really, in my view, Suleiman will correct me if I'm wrong, is Misrata. And then the smaller towns, including Tobruk, this very small town right over here, close to the Egyptian border. Important town in our context as regards Libya today. Tobruk, actually, it's an English name, means the British called the place Top Rock in the war, and it was a little village, and the local Libyans changed that to Tobruk. But there you go. So we had the war of liberation for Libya. And Gaddafi, you know Gaddafi, you know what he was. When he started out, he was one of the good guys, and in my view, he got corrupted by power. But he got corrupted by power and went a little crazy, really. Anyway, from my personal perspective, he did the most extraordinary things. Some of them were quite charming. He changed the months of the year and named them after flowers. He did amazing things. Some of them were a little more intrusive. He made everybody paint their front doors green. You know, and so forth. Well, enough about Gaddafi, but we had a revolution. Ambassador Hambley and I were in Libya at Suleiman's invitation at the time of the uprising against Gaddafi, at which point Misrata, this key town, nearly fell. And had Misrata fallen, I think Libya would have been partitioned into two countries, but it didn't. It didn't. The rebels didn't fall. The Gaddafi's forces did not retake Misrata. We had a kind of transitional national council in Libya, which ran things. Suleiman was part of that council. They were revolutionaries. They were appointed, if you like, by their cities, by their towns, and that went well. And there was an election for a General National Congress, very good vote, and that sat in Tripoli. So far, so good. And then in June of last year, we had national elections for a parliament. The problem with the national elections was that under Western influence, we decided really that they shouldn't have political parties because we didn't want too many Islamists showing their heads. So we encouraged Libya not to have political parties. That was all very well, but it made it rather an uninteresting election for the people of Libya. You know, you're going to vote for Fred or Janice or Charlie, and you don't really know who Fred or Janice or Charlie are and what they represent. So the turnout was minute in this election. Indeed, it's a 200-member assembly, and one constituency down in the south elected a member of parliament with 2 votes, presumably himself and his wife. But so we had, but we did have a parliament elected. But then, in my view, Suleiman may disagree with me, then people panicked a little because it turned out that quite a number of the people in that parliament were Gaddafi loyalists. And so that frightened the outgoing parliament or General National Congress in Tripoli. And the handover of power was rather shaky. Indeed, there was a gentleman called General Haftar, an ex-Gaddafi general, and he seemed to rather become more and more influential over elements of these parliamentarians who were ex-Gaddafi loyalists. So people panicked, and there was no proper handover of power from the General National Congress to the new assembly. There was then an argument as to whether the new assembly was legitimate at all, and there we have it. There's Libya today. Elements of the parliament ran to Tobruk. to this little village over here. It's a town, but it's not a very big town. It's right over by the border. I've been there and spent time there. It's got a little harbor. It's very charming. You'd all love it. It's a nice place for a holiday. But this little town here declared an emirate, Derna, and it was run. The kids, the revolutionaries in that town, decided that they would be loyal to ISIS, Islamic State, all by themselves. But the rest of Libya was quite calm for a time. But the General Haftar, the general who had some allegiance at one time to Gaddafi, felt that this was his moment. So he declared himself the protector of the parliament in Tobruk, the new parliament. The remnant of the new parliament, because we're actually talking a very small remnant of the new parliament, because most of them went home, as did many members of the old parliament, the GNC. And so we had two competing prime ministers. And we do have two prime ministers, two parliaments, two governments. This one is recognized by the West. This one controls Tobruk, this town. The Tripolitania, the Tripoli government, controls the bulk of Libya. The bulk of Libya, the main swathe of Libya. Benghazi is a war zone, the second town in Libya. There are no diplomats now. The only ambassador left in Tripoli is the Italian ambassador. So that's the situation, and we have an ongoing war. So now, Ambassador Hambley and I went to quite, well, comparatively recently, a month or so ago, to Misrata. I'll tell you a little about this country. What can I tell you? It's quite interesting, actually, driving from Misrata to Tripoli is a unique experience. I found it fascinating because the front doors now are no longer painted Gaddafi's green. By and large, especially near Tripoli and near Misrata, they've been painted over, usually white. But you get about halfway between Tripoli and Misrata, and you get occasionally, you get the odd green door of somebody who really still likes Gaddafi. But then you get a swathe of villages and towns as you're around midpoint where they've painted half their door white and half their door green, just to cover the bases so they don't get into trouble, you know. So Libya's a lovely place, but and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. No booze, of course. They didn't have alcohol under Gaddafi. They have some lovely alternative drinks. They have bitter soda, which is like Campari, but fizzy Campari. I love it anyway, but not a lot of people would. But there you go. But it's a lovely country, and the people. I mean, the people. There are interesting phenomena. You get, of course, the Misratans are leading the fighting here. The Misratans are the main fighters, really, against the rest who are supporting General Haftar. And you see the kids, you know. And there's not a family in Libya that hasn't lost a family member. And you see the kids, and it's heartbreaking. And they haven't got much time for people from our generation, Suleiman's mine. They say, we're the ones that face the bullets with our chests. That's exactly what one of them said to me. You know, what do we need with you old ones? You're part of the problem, really. So they are fighting, and it's interesting to see young fighters. There are different phenomena. You know, you get in different cultures, you get different stresses on fighters and soldiers. They express themselves in different ways. Gulf War syndrome, or post-traumatic stress, or you get, and in ancient times, people who fought with cutlasses and so on in the Crusades, they used to be haunted by dreams and so on. But in Libya, it seems to me, I remember meeting one particular fighter. He was like dressed with a black coat, like Beau Geste, you know? He had just come back from the front. And the most beautiful young man, really handsome boy. And he was dressed in black, and I went to shake his hand, and he winced because he was wounded. And you could see these sort of hollow eyes because he was just traumatized. But he was going back to the fight. I mean, you're a young man from Misrata of that age, you fight. So this war is tearing Libya apart. And civil wars, as you know, are the most brutal war. It's incomprehensibly brutal, any civil war. Any civil war, the American Civil War or the current Syrian civil war, any civil war is cruel, ruthless. So they are facing this fight at the moment in Libya. What for? Both sides, I maintain, or citizens in both sides, really want a peace process. They would like to see a peace. And it's heart-rending where they are going at the moment. Pointless also, utterly pointless. And the Western powers are not helping. We are simply not helping at all. And what are we likely to do? I mean, Alan Barr alluded to this morning. We're likely to send troops in at some stage into Benghazi to secure Benghazi for the people in Tobruk. So what's that going to achieve? That's going to achieve the partition of Libya, because they're never going to come to this half. When a peace process is so easy, really, I mean, it's a small country, we can bash their heads together and make peace, I think. It's my opinion. Anyway, I'm being waved down, my time's up. Okay, so what I appeal for is peace rather than war, and I think it's in the hands of countries like the United States of America to lead the drive for peace in Libya. Thank you.
I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. I would like to thank Mr. William and Mr. Hambley for their being brave and came to Libya so many times during during the revolution, and just recently, a couple of months ago. And they've been here safe and no harm, and they wish if they've been spoken about their experience on Misrata or on the roads, and they have met so many parliament members and the government, and this is the most important. I'll tell you a little bit the history of why the revolution. I think we all agree that this evil, which is here in the country for 42 years, he should go. Whether he's good or bad or ugly, is enough. And that's the people, the Libyan people's wish. He should go, and he already gone. None of the Arab leaders went peacefully, went with election. So this is the only way a Libyan or Arab, or I'm not saying Muslims, leaders, he can go peacefully. 4 years is enough. 5 years is enough. No, 42 years. I think you only take 42 years, only a wife, which is every day it will be more interesting. But not a president, whatever he's good is. I think Obama, if he stay another 4 years, people will start complaining. So, anyway, the whole Libyan, 6 million agree that this man, he should go. Thanks to the international community who help Libyan. Libyan, they don't have any weapons. The only weapons they have is the kitchen knife. That's the only thing they have. And they managed to take Gaddafi down with thanks to God and to the international community to help. But they took Gaddafi and his sons down, but they did not take the whole regime. Where the whole regime gone? They flee the country. There are not so many. And they went to the neighbors' countries, mainly Egypt, Emirates, Europe. And they went with full box of money, gold, the treasury of Libyans. After a few years, the Libyan people, the revolution went very nicely. The first election, no one bullet being on the street. Everybody are armed in Libya. Everybody has a Kalashnikovs, name it. Maybe tanks in his garage, Everybody want to have peace, want to have democracy. And that's what happened in the first 2 years. And they issued what they call it, the political isolation, yes? And that's what actually, on that list, a lot of people from Gaddafi regime being on that list. And that's what makes things for a change. Those people, they gather together with the army, with the help of the neighboring country, which is already queued Egypt, and they start helping and getting together, and they make queue against the revolution. The new parliament, which has been elected, hijacked themselves, and they went to the nearest city to Egypt, to Sisi. Why went to Tobruk? Why they did not go to any other city? They went to that city so they could be protected by the neighbor country, unfortunately, with the ally of the Emirate. But Libyan people are still fighting for their freedom, and they will not leave it like this. They will not give it to another hand. A person called Haftar, he's worse than Gaddafi. The American knows. He's been here nearly 30 years. He lived in this country. He's been in a war with Chad. He has a lot, not to give to the country, but to murder the rest of the people who has not been murdered in Chad war. Very simple. What is Haftar and the neighboring country? So they can tell the West. So they can tell the West, oh, this is very bad. So what to say? Oh, this is Daesh here. ISIS here. They killed people here. They killed Egyptian here. How? Libyan 6 million people turn in one day to be Daesh, to be ISIS, to be fanatic Muslims? No, I come from Misrata. I am a Misrati. I am one of the victims of Gaddafi. He took my father. He took my father and my 2 brothers. 8 years in prison, and he cut their heads. My other brother, he's in this revolution. And only just a small victim from the 6 million of people. So Haftar and the rest of Gaddafi regime came back, and they told the international community, this is Daesh in Libya, ISIS in Libya. I would like to ask Morris, did he see any Daesh? Did he see any ISIS? Did he see any fanatics? He went there, he stayed 7 days with no protection, with no security. A lot of Western there. Please, they should not insult our intelligence. Those people, they want to come back, and they want to tell the Western people that is Misrata is Daesh. Daesh in Libya. Yesterday, in front of the White House, Egyptian wearing these pink things, and they're asking Obama to bomb Libya. Okay, if we all agree, I'm agree, there is some Daesh members in Libya. Well, 10, 100, 200, 500? Is that how we treat them? We bomb them by planes, tanks? Daesh members all over. There is some in Washington here, Paris, London, but that's not the way how to treat, that's not the way how to catch them. We all against this terrorism. Yes, we got rid of Gaddafi because he's a terrorist. He's the one who supported IRA. He's the one who bombed German. He's the one and he's the one. You cannot count. 42 years. We want to live in the freedom. We want to live with the West. We want to live in the very, with the like any other human, like any other countries. But the trouble with Libya now will never finish if there is intervention from the neighboring country, like Egypt, like Emirate. Egypt run by Sisi. He's an army man. He want the will, and they want Libya to run by an army man. So please, nobody polish your brains and tell you this ISIS or Daesh or blah, blah. Anybody want to visit Libya, most welcome. I'm going back after tomorrow. I will get him the visa and come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be amongst you. I am here to talk about Syria and to give you my opinion. Some of you might disagree, but I guess this is democracy, so I'm going to share with you this opinion. Syria is my country. It's a very beautiful country. It's a mosaic of religions, sects, and ethnic groups. These people have lived together for thousands of years, peacefully. They have gone through a difficult time, certainly, invasions, wars, fatwas, and last century we had also the Ottomans, who were expert of impalements and committed many massacres in my country. And this beautiful mosaic is still there and exists and lives together. Today, after the beginning of the Arab Spring, in the so-called Arab Spring, I don't know about the name, in Libya, in Tunisia, people in Syria started having legitimate demands because people want change and people want democracy. We all want democracy. We all want to be free, and we also want to live in a safe environment. We want our children to go to school, and we want to know that they're going to come back home safe. So people started protesting. Genuine people who really wanted change. But we have reports we have press reports, we have witness reports that since the first days, the very beginning, police forces and soldiers were shot at and killed. And this led to the authorities. This pushed the authorities to commit many mistakes, and they did. They committed many mistakes. And the result today is a war. So the revolution, the so-called revolution, was hijacked by people who have an ideology, a backward ideology, mostly the Muslim Brotherhood. The Syrian war. Today, the numbers are very, very, very confusing. We can look on the internet. You can hear about, you can read, I think 200,000 casualties is the number that everyone would agree. And the double, maybe 400,000 people are injured. And millions of people, they need urgent help. And again, millions are internally displaced, and I think there's 3 or 4 million abroad in Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon. Again, it's very difficult to verify the numbers. This is an approximate figure. Airstrikes. Airstrikes began in September 2014. But before airstrikes, we had rebels, the so-called moderate rebels, the Free Syrian Army. It's a beautiful name. Although an army cannot be free, an army has to be organized and strict and disciplined. So free and army do not go together, but nevertheless, the name mediatically is good. The Free Syrian Army was backed by the West. It's not a secret. One of the persons who pushed for backing the Free Syrian Army is Ambassador Ford, the previous ambassador, US ambassador to Syria. And interestingly, recently, this same person declared that the Free Syrian Army is not trustworthy because they have close links with Al-Qaeda groups like such as Al-Nusra or the so-called ISIS and so on. And then we have the airstrikes. We thought that the airstrikes could limit the expansion of what we call ISIS. I don't think we can get rid of terrorism with airstrikes. It's very difficult. And the numbers are here to prove it, because there, in Syria, I think the total airstrikes in Syria and Iraq is, in 4 months, 2,000 airstrikes, 1,000 in Syria and 1,000 in Iraq. So 1,000 airstrikes in Syria killed less than 1,000 people in Syria. I think most of them are terrorists. The daily cost is $8 million. That's a lot of money. So it's obviously not efficient. Since the airstrikes began in Syria and Iraq, ISIS have grown bigger. They have expanded, and they have ambitions in Lebanon, in Libya, and who knows where next. Because these people have no borders. These people have a very, very special ideology. Of course, they are joined by ex-Saddam Hussein soldiers who are very well trained and very well organized. And this is what explains the success of ISIS. They are not a simple terrorist group like Mr. Boer said today. They are a proper army joined by recruits from everywhere. Again, the numbers are very confusing, but I think, from what I understand, there is 20,000 recruits from abroad. This is many people, and the numbers have increased since the airstrikes have started. So airstrikes, again, is a sign of good faith. What's reassuring in it is the good intentions that the West has in helping Syrians and Iraqi people to defeat ISIS. But the effect is negative. Arming the Syrian rebels. We've heard that the Americans, other Western countries, are preparing thousands of Syrians to go into Syria, and this time not to fight the government, but to fight ISIS. Well, I mean, I am Syrian, and it is very difficult for me to distinguish, to know who is a Syrian fanatic and who is not. So how can an American or a French or a British person make this distinction? It's going to be very difficult. So they might get it wrong. And again, these people who are trained, they might get into Syria, go to fight ISIS, and change their mind, and half of them might defect with their weaponry, with their training, and join ISIS. And the other half might maybe return to where they came from. Then we have the issue of the president, the Syrian president. The Syrian president who everybody thought that he would resign in the beginning, maybe in the first year of the crisis. Well, it didn't happen. Then everybody thought that the second year, maybe. Then it didn't happen. And today we are in year number 5, and he is still the president of Syria, and the representative of Syria in the United Nations is a man who worked for the Syrian government. so for the Syrian president. Opposition groups have been very vocal. Most of the opposition group we heard are opposition groups who live in the West, who live in Western countries, or Saudi, or Qatar, or Libya, Turkey. For these people, from where they sit, it's very easy to speak because they have food, they have heating in the winter, and they have more or less a normal life. So for them, saying that no peace as long as Assad is in power, very easy, because their life is okay. But meanwhile, people are suffering and dying every day in Syria. So for the people in Syria, it's not okay, but for these people, it's okay. So I think that many opposition groups have misled Western powers by giving promises and not delivering. Because at the end of the day, it's all a matter of who do you represent on the ground. It's not only how many conferences you attend or how many TV programs you appear on, and it's really who you represent on the ground. And these people do not represent many people in Syria. They had an obsession with the departure of the president, Bashar al-Assad, and the president did not go. And to be honest, to be frank with you, there is no sign of him going anywhere in the next couple of years for the rest of his mandate. So we should understand that after 4 Chinese and Russian vetoes, and after 200,000 people who died, and half of Syria destroyed, and 300 historical sites damaged by this war, we should understand that we have to push the international community to put pressure on everybody to sit together with no preconditions. And that's the whole point. We have to make people who hate each other to sit together, because it's a waste of time for people who like each other to sit together and talk. We really need to get those who don't like each other. And I have seen, maybe there is, we're getting there, but very slowly. And I say very slowly because people are really suffering in Syria. We're in contact with many people in Syria, and we know how life is difficult there. And I wouldn't want to be there. And I don't wish for anybody to be there, to be in Syria. Most of the people who live under government-controlled area, they they live with the fear of snipers, rockets. There is very little food supply, no heating, and most of the schools are closed now. So it's a very difficult life. And imagine those who are trapped in the occupied cities and villages by the so-called ISIS. Imagine what their life are today. They are totally trapped. Some of them had a chance to escape. They left everything behind them. The others died, but most of them had to stay. And they live in a very, very difficult situation today. So, as I said, the solution is for everybody to sit together with no preconditions. And also, with regards to the so-called ISIS, the West should put pressure on countries like Turkey, who buys ISIS oil. So I know it's very difficult because these people are very well organized. They receive money, they have their own taxes. They receive money from everywhere in the world. But we can limit this. We can maybe lower their income by putting pressure on Turkey not to buy their gas, for example. There are so many other things to do.
Thank you very much, Siwar, for that sobering, but in some way a little hopeful, maybe. We have time now for a few questions of our guests. If you'd please identify yourselves when you make your question. Make questions short, please. Try and get as many as we can in the few minutes we have left to us, and then we will take it from there, okay? First, our distinguished member of the current parliament, which is from Tobruk. Please identify yourself, Ali. Is there a roaming mic?
Okay.
I guess not. Good.
My name is Ali Abu Zakuk. I'm elected from Benghazi to the House of Representatives. But because of the conspiracy that members of the House of Representatives Benghazi did with the rogue Colonel Haftar, they hijacked the House of Representatives of Tobruk. I and another 25 members of the elected from the cities of Libya refused. There is something that should be done in brief. The struggle today in Libya is between the revolution of 17th of February and the forces against it, which considered to be, as Sayyid Sulaiman said, the deep state, which was there and wanted to control it. Haftar in February 2014 announced the coup d'etat by the radio Al-Arabiya TV station. After it, 2 months after it, Al-Qaqa wa Sawaq, the battalions who were controlling Tripoli, announced also to make a coup d'etat against legitimate power in Libya. All what happened later on is a struggle between these forces and the other forces. Today, the Constitutional Court made a decision that the House of Representatives was based on a non-constitutional amendment which made it null and void. Nevertheless, what is the failing of Western powers is that they said, no, we will study the decision of the Constitutional Court. And I was joking, many of us were really laughing. Constitutional courts, you take the decisions or you refuse them or you accept them, but you don't study them. As Mr. Bernardino Leon, the representative of the United Nations, said. So the world failing to recognize, as you said, the General National Congress, which still did not hand over peacefully the power to the House of Representatives and the government Ali, that came from it.
Question, please. Do you have
the question is that both of you have been there. And I hope that you have met with the GNC members or the government and tell the people there, is there really security problems in Tripoli or in Misrata? Is there a Daesh, as Sayyid Sulaiman said? Have you really been threatened? Because it's important. You have previous experiences in other countries, and it is important to tell the people about your experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ali. We'll take a couple of questions, and we'll ask the panel to answer them. Speak loudly. I'll try and repeat the question back there, please, gentlemen.
Mr. Morris
Yes.
want to answer the question.
We'll do three, yeah. Please, your question, yeah. We'll take a bunch of questions, and we'll have them answered in a group.
My name is Yi Chen. I come from China. Probably I'm the only person from China in this conference. And I was here 3 years ago. I'm so glad to hear two honorable guests from Libya and Syria, because 3 years ago I was here. That was when China put a lot of, already 1 year after China put a lot of Chinese immigrants and the business people from Libya, tens of thousands of them. And China learned to do the 4 vetoes with Russia regarding Syria, interference of Syria. And that was 3 years ago. I was asked by quite a few participants, why China do that? And now I'm very glad to hear that one of our honorable Syrian guests said that China probably have something to that. So, to doing the veto. And my think tank is one of the handful of think tanks in China that works on the Middle East peace. And when we were established 5 years ago, we thought probably the only peace problem is Israel and Palestine. But apparently there's not going to be a lot of peace in the future in the Middle East in the next few years. So the two guests from Libya and Syria, if you were to suggest the Chinese government the next step to work with your government or your country, what should China do? Because the China's special envoy to the Middle East and to Africa are both our advisors, and it's very convenient for me to submit your proposal if it's sensible. Thank you.
Thank Dr. Chen. One last question, please, ma'am.
My name is Sahar Taman, and I wanted to ask the panel if they could explain for maybe more of the common public a little bit more about where the resources of ISIS are coming from. So you mentioned the oil, but we see, if you dare to watch some of these short videos of ISIS events, pickup trucks, nice brand new matching white pickup trucks, metal cages that look like they were manufactured in a well developed. We see the orange suits, we see the black suits, we see, so not just the weaponry. Where are these resources coming from? Where is that?
Thank you, very good, okay. One last question over here, the lady, yes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Abir Shaban. I'm a doctorate candidate at Washington State University. I have a question to Mr. Sulaiman, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Mr. You denied the existence of Daesh and ICS in Libya. Do you deny the existence of these groups in Libya?
Yeah, well, just ask the question, we'll answer it. But
regardless of the names, I could categorize them under the name of extremists. I am from Benghazi, a city that suffered a lot and struggled a lot because of these people.
what city are you from?
Benghazi.
Benghazi, okay.
And Haftar, yes, he was one of Gaddafi military men, but he defected and lived for a while here in the United States. And now he's our own sole hope in order to constitute or build this security army that's failed with the failing or the collapsing of Gaddafi regime. So one question, I believe those who deny the existence of these people in Libya, they have only one agenda, that they are either with them or something that we don't know.
Okay, fine. We'll take these answers now from our panelists on some of these questions. First, the one on what about security in Libya? William would like to make a brief comment.
Yeah, security in Libya. The question Mr. Ali was asking was about Islamists in particular. I mean, yes, security is sound. We drove, as I said, to Tripoli and back, and there was not a problem there. Indeed, we didn't even see any police or soldiers on the street. It was quite calm, quite easy, and we walked the streets of Misrata alone, Ambassador Hambley and myself, of an evening, and went down and smoked shisha in the in the market. And, you know, I mean, there is, so security in Libya, by and large, as long as you're not at the front line, is fine. Islamists, other Islamists in Libya, I haven't been asked to answer the Daesh question, but just to deal with the Islamists, things have changed. The women now tend to wear headscarves almost universally, whereas I've traveled to Libya frequently. Prior to the revolution, perhaps, a third of women would go without, certainly in the big towns, would go without headscarves. They wouldn't do that now, mostly because they'd be bullied by young revolutionary men who would say, why don't you cover up? So things have changed. But having said that, there is no presence of Islamists as we would understand it. I mean, there are not in the main body of Libya. What goes on in fringes of Benghazi, there is a problem. But in main Tripoli and Misrata, you don't get a sense that there are Islamists about.
thank you. We'll go to two questions now regarding Syria. We'll get back to Daesh in a minute. Let's take the question about Chinese, what China can do to be helpful for Siwar and Suleiman as well on that question, please.
China is a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. China is a great power. China could do many things. China could, and also China is geographically closer to Syria and even Libya than the United States. So the danger could spread to China faster than it could spread to the United States, because there is an ocean between this area of the world and the United States.
Those are the Uyghurs.
Yeah, it's not the case with China. So China is a major player in the international community, so it could convince its partners in the Security Council to put pressure on all parties to sit down together and to talk and to find a solution and to end the suffering of the Syrian people. This is what China could do.
Siwar, would you also like to comment on the source of income for Daesh?
Source of income? Well, where do I start? There's so many. As I said, oil, they have their own taxes, because we have made a mistake in the West and in the world. We have given them what they want. We have fallen in their trap. We are calling them ISIS. We are giving them this legitimacy. We are saying that they are a state, which is their dream. Their dream is to build this state caliphate. We should never have called them state. We should have called them terrorists. And these terrorists, where are they? They are in Iraq and Syria. So we could have called them the terrorists of Iraq and Syria. TIR, for example, TIS, or you know, anything like that. But we have, now it's too late, because it became normal for us to say ISIS. It's easy to say it, so we're saying it. So a state has income, has resources. They are selling so many artifacts, historical artifacts in Syria and Iraq, and fortunately they are selling them, and mainly through Turkey. They are receiving gifts from all the Muslim world, and considerable gifts. And also for the filming and the cages and the trucks. Don't forget that these people are joined by foreign fighters coming from so many different countries. Interestingly enough, these foreign fighters who come from many places, they come with their qualifications. So some of them are doctors, architects, filmmakers. Have you seen their filming? The quality of their filming is better than so many other like TV stations, or it's like Hollywoodian. So they have so many endless resources. The Muslim world is, you're talking about more than 1 billion people in this world who live in all the countries of the world.
Okay. So, Imam, would you like to comment on the question about General Haftar, particularly?
Yes. Well, I don't know if who doesn't know Haftar, this enormous man. Probably everybody knows Maradona and Muhammad Ali Klai, but Haftar, he's the worst on his field. Now, this man, he come with the old regime, I've told you, with the old regime, but they are not counting, they are not a number. So he got his friend, the Sisi, next door, Egypt, and he got the support. Now they are asking the international community, how they will convince the international community? They will tell them, oh, Daesh here, ISIS here. My honorable friend, Morrison, he said he visited Libya many times and he saw the scarf is going, more and more. And his explanation, because ISIS or Daesh behind us. No, my friend. You see in this, there are 4 Muslim women wearing scarves. Is the husband from Daesh or ISIS? No. Especially the lady who's asked. She is wearing a scarf. This is, I will tell you an English say. If the eye cannot see what the heart doesn't know. Is that right? Yes. I'm not teaching you English here, but I'll tell you something. Libyan case is a different case. from Syria, from Iraq, from anywhere. Oh, we all Sunnis, Muslims. We all related. My wife, her sisters are in Benghazi. My brother married from Tobruk. They all related. We Misratis, we are traders. So traders, not traders, traders. We all have business all over Libya. So this actually man with the regime, I can understand. Yes, wealth and power. Everybody wants this. And they come back. And they want Libya again. With Haftar. No, my friend. My honorable sister, Benghazi is not the ashes of sisters. No, Haftar, he wanted to be a field for his battles. And he wanted to show to the people. And he actually hijacked the parliament to Tobruk, next city, nearly 50 kilometers from Egypt. This is it. This is the Libyan case. Please, there's no Daesh or there's no in Libya to be worried about. There may be some numbers, yes, 10 or 100, but that's not the way we can battle them or we can handle them. I told you, there is Daesh members here in Washington and in New York and in London and in Paris, all over. Can we handle it by bombard them by planes, as my honorable friend the Syrian say? No, there is another way. This is excuse. Please come back, international community in Libya, and bombard the Daesh and ISIS and the fanatics Muslims. That's what they are. Please, please. This is something. Don't insult our intelligence and the international community. My Chinese friend. My Chinese friend. My Chinese friend. My Chinese friend.
Stuff on General Haftar.
My Chinese friend. If you want to do business with the Libyan people is there. And that's the Libyan there. If you want to deal with the Gaddafi is gone. Okay? We are the most, promise you, and go to your country. I visited China twice after the revolution, and I told them, we respect all contracts happened during Gaddafi time. But when they are, Libya is ready to business, yes, you must welcome. And we thank your government for voting yes for Gaddafi that day. I don't know. That was a surprise, but it's happened. I hope it will happen again for Syria. Please, my friend, all Arab countries, we want to wake up again, and we want to be joining the whole nation for peace, freedom, and democracy, and we enjoy life. Please, that's what we want. Thank you very much.
And I want to remind everybody, Dr. Chen has I believe, a panel on China shortly after this thing, so please look for it. One more question, please. Fadal. Brief question. No comment, just a question, please.
Ahmed Ahmed with the Minaret of Freedom Institute, and my question is for Siwar.
A little louder, please.
I'll repeat the question.
I'm Ahmed Ahmed with the Minaret of Freedom Institute. My question is for Siwar Al-Assad. You indicated that you thought getting people to get together to talk is the solution. Do you think that, what influence does the United States or anyone in the United States have with all of these parties in Syria to make that happen? And since you made a similar comment, you suggested that it could happen, but I'd like more details. How can we do it?
Sure. Thank you very much. Everybody get the question? Siwar?
The United States and the Western world has all the influence. It's a matter of telling them what to do, I guess. I have no other answer to this. It might sound funny, but there's no other answer.
William, you might comment?
Yeah, yeah, of course, we were working very hard on the Syrian issue. We got slightly distracted with our confrontation with Russia. The problem with the confrontation with Russia is that we really need Russia and the United States to work together when we're talking about the Syrian issue and indeed the Libyan issue or many of these issues. Countries, the Security Council members have to talk to one another. China too. They have to be engaged with one another. They are the force, the driving force. And there is talk now. We've had Geneva 1, Geneva 2, Moscow 1. There are rumors going around of Oslo 1. Whether it's Oslo 1 or Geneva 3 or Moscow 2, whatever it turns out to be, there will be another attempt at peace. And what we really need is the international community coming in powerfully for peace instead of backing their different factions. That applies to both wars, both civil wars, the Libyan and the Syrian, where all of us, and it's the entire international community, Iran, Turkey, Russia, well, we could go on, Saudi, Britain, France, we're all backing little groups. And it's not helpful. We need to be backing peace, because enough already. And we could do it with a serious international effort. I genuinely believe peace is very possible.
We've reached the end of our time, but we have one last comment from Siwar and Suleiman. Just
okay.
One last comment, each of you.
I'd like to say one thing. Please, you all pray for us, Libya and Syria. Libya, the best solution is the dialogue. Now it's going on. We all support dialogue. Without the dialogue, this civil war will never finish. All wars finish with the dialogue. Although Misrata, as my friend Mars, he accused us, we are always in the front line. Yes, we are proud to be Misratans, and we are proud to be saying that we nailed Gaddafi down. But we will put the country with the other revolutions in the whole country, the country on the track and on a good shape. We support the dialogue, and we need the international community, and we will give all our support to Mr. Leon for his efforts, although it's a very, very difficult, but we want the dialogue to continue, and we want to support the dialogue. Thank you very much indeed.
That's precise.
I just came 2 days ago from Libya, and I'm going back in 2 days' time, and this is the truth. 2 weeks ago, I was on the front line, and I was assisting what's happening. And be honest, I swear with all my life that I didn't see Daesh in the front line or in Libya.
Yeah, perhaps that's an issue that Dr. Chen can take back to Beijing, too. Siwar, one last comment.
Some opposition groups in Syria, they think that the United States are going to go to Syria with their tanks and planes and take these people with them to Syria and install them in the presidential palace and then say thank you very much, goodbye. I think, to go back to your question, I think the West and the United States could start by telling them that this is not going to happen. Or if this is going to happen, then just do it and let's finish with it. So this is one of the things. And the West could do so many things in Syria, as I said, and encourage secularism, help Syria financially, economically, regardless of who the president is. The president issue, the Syrian people will deal with it. As I said, the Syrian people went through so much in their history, crises that are harder, more difficult than this one, so they will get over this problem. But we have to give them time. We need a peaceful and gradual transition in Syria. This is what we need.
Thanks, Siwar. William, last comment?
Well, yes, last comment. I mean, the way the world is now, heaven knows what's going to happen to the Middle East. I'll just make a last comment by referring to something that Siwar's father said to me. He said, you know, war isn't really the opposite of peace. Not here in the Middle East. War is not the opposite of peace. In a way, we can cope with war. We can deal with war. The opposite of peace for us is chaos. And what we're living in is total and absolute chaos. And that's the truth. I don't think anybody really has a strategy, a real vision for the future. Not the international community, not the governments locally. And we want to get out of this mind state, this terrible, terrible state of chaos, and have some vision for the future. If we can do that, then we'll build a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Join us and thank our panel, please. Thank you very much, gentlemen.